In The Three Spinners, the Brothers Grimm fairy tale, a lazy girl's mother falsely claims her daughter is industrious, leading the queen to order her to spin 3 rooms of flax into thread or marry the prince. Desperate, the girl accepts help from 3 strange, deformed women who offer to spin the flax if she invites them to her wedding and calls them her aunts. At the wedding, the prince asks about their deformities, and the women reveal they come from years of spinning, one from treading, one from licking the thread, and one from twisting it. Horrified by the physical effects of spinning, the prince forbids his bride from ever spinning again, freeing her from the task. The story, A Lazy Girl and a Royal Task. There once was a girl who had a profound dislike for spinning. She would do anything to avoid the spinning wheel and the tiresome work of turning raw flax into fine thread. One day, her mother, frustrated by her daughter's laziness, but also wanting to present her in the best light, took her to see the queen. In the royal court, the mother began to boast, telling the queen a great lie. She claimed her daughter was so skilled and hardworking that she could spin day and night, filling entire rooms with thread. The queen, who loved the sound of a humming spinning wheel and valued industry above all else, was very impressed by this tale. She decided to put the girl's supposed skills to the test. The queen led the girl to the castle, showing her 3 vast rooms, each one piled high to the ceiling with raw, unprocessed flax. She then gave the girl an order: spin all of this flax into thread. If she could complete this monumental task, the queen promised her a grand reward: the hand of her handsome son, the prince, in marriage. The girl was led into the first room, the heavy door was locked behind her, and she was left alone with the mountain of flax and an impossible task. The appearance of the spinners. Left to herself, the poor girl was overcome with despair. She looked at the immense pile of flax and knew she could not spin it, not in a year, let alone in the time allotted. She had never been a willing spinner, and the sheer volume of work was terrifying. For 3 days, she sat in the room and cried, not touching the spinning wheel or a single strand of flax. On the evening of the 3rd day, as tears streamed down her face, the door creaked open, and 3 strange women entered the room. They were unlike anyone she had ever seen. Each had a distinct and unusual physical feature that made them stand out. They saw the girl weeping in the untouched flax, and they kindly asked her what was wrong. The girl, through her sobs, explained her terrible situation, the impossible task set by the queen, and the royal marriage that depended on its completion. The 3 strange women listened patiently, and when she was finished, they made her an incredible offer. They told her they would spin all the flax for her, every last bit down to the final thread. The deal. The girl could hardly believe her ears. Hope blossomed in her heart, but she knew such a generous offer must come with a condition. She asked the 3 women what they wanted in return for their help. The women laid out their terms, which were peculiar but seemed simple enough. They did not ask for gold or jewels. Instead, they made a single request related to her future wedding. They asked that if she did indeed marry the prince, she must invite them to the wedding feast. Furthermore, she must not be ashamed of them. She had to introduce them to the royal court as her dear aunts and give them seats of honor at the high table, right beside her. The girl, seeing this as a small price to pay for her freedom and a royal future, eagerly agreed to their terms. Without a moment's hesitation, she promised to invite them, call them her aunts, and seat them at the high table. With the deal struck, the girl felt a huge weight lift from her shoulders. The spinners at work. As soon as the deal was made, the 3 women immediately set to work with astonishing speed and skill. They were masters of their craft, and each had a specific role. The first woman had an enormous, broad, flat foot. She sat at the spinning wheel and used her foot to work the treadle, making the wheel hum and spin faster than the eye could see. The second woman had a long, pendulous lower lip that hung down over her chin. She used her lip to wet the flax fibers as they were being drawn out, ensuring the thread was smooth and even. The third woman possessed a thumb that was unusually broad and flat. She used this thumb to twist the thread, drawing it out and winding it onto the bobbin with perfect precision. Together, they worked in a seamless, rhythmic motion. The wheel whirred, the thread flew, and the bobbins filled up one after another. Whenever the queen came to check on the girl's progress, she was amazed to see the pile of flax shrinking and the bobbins of fine spun thread growing. The girl simply hit the spinners and presented their work as her own. In no time, the first room was empty, then the second, and finally the third, all filled with perfectly spun thread. The wedding and the reveal. The queen was overjoyed with the result. The 3 rooms were now filled with countless bobbins of the finest thread she had ever seen. True to her word, she announced that the wedding between her son and the industrious girl would take place immediately. The prince was pleased to marry such a beautiful and, he believed, hard-working bride. A magnificent wedding feast was prepared, and guests from all over the kingdom were invited. The bride, remembering her promise, did not forget the 3 strange women. She sent them an invitation, and on the day of the wedding, they arrived at the castle. At the grand feast, as the prince and his new bride sat at the high table, the 3 women were led in. The bride greeted them warmly, saying, "Welcome, my dear aunts." They were given seats of honor right at the high table as promised. The prince, however, was curious. He looked at his bride's peculiar relatives and could not help but ask about their strange appearances. He turned to the first woman and asked, "How is it that you have such a broad, flat foot?" The woman smiled and replied, "From treading, your highness, from treading the spinning wheel." He then asked the second woman, "And why do you have such a long hanging lip?" She answered, "From licking, your highness, from licking the thread to make it smooth." Finally, he turned to the third and asked, "And your thumb, why is it so very broad?" She explained, "From twisting, your highness, from twisting the thread." The prince's promise. Hearing these explanations, the prince was filled with a sense of horror. He looked at his own beautiful, delicate bride and imagined her developing a broad foot, a hanging lip, or a flattened thumb from years of spinning. The very thought was unbearable to him. He did not want his lovely wife to suffer such a fate and be deformed by the very work that had won her his hand. He stood up before the entire court and made a solemn declaration. He announced that from that day forward, his beloved bride would never ever have to touch a spinning wheel again. He forbade her from ever spinning flax, wanting to preserve her beauty and save her from the grueling labor that had so strangely marked her aunts. And so, the girl who always hated spinning was freed from the task forever. Thanks to a little lie, a big promise, and the help of 3 mysterious spinners, she lived happily ever after with her prince, without ever having to spin another thread.